the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm good.
Something that I have come to know is that there are so many hidden battles that first responders struggle with that nobody sees. And if that first responder doesn't have an outlet for themselves, then it's also going to be struggles that they will never be able to talk to anyone else about.
Yeah, I think over time you start picking up those bad habits. You start struggling with internal things that over the years, they become normal for you. And it's really not getting caught up in that dynamic to where you're leaning on unhealthy habits and unhealthy instances because of they're going to lead to future problems.
I know so many first responders who, when you say something about like maybe have talk therapy with somebody or, go see a professional, and you do it in a gentle way, not as bluntly as that. The first thing that they say is that why would they want to talk to somebody who doesn't do what they do? They're not going to understand. And I think that a lot of people feel that same way. And to some extent, I understand that, because if I were you, Clint, as a cop, and I needed to go talk to somebody, I too would want to speak to somebody who understood my profession, perhaps had experience in it.
Yeah, and I absolutely, I agree to a point too, but at the same time, I've seen a lot of different resources that know and have an understanding of the first responder realm and of that military realm. And then you see them talking in like a public setting and you're like, this person's a moron. And I've actually seen more negativity associated to people who know what we do and know what we go through compared to someone who doesn't have a clue.
Yeah. And, we've talked, and that's not to say everybody who doesn't have experience is going to be of that nature, but it takes a certain level of brashness, I think. It takes a certain level of intellect. And it's like when I interview somebody on our podcast, for example, there's no way I would bring somebody onto our show and then I show up to interview them and I have no idea who I'm sitting in front of when I interview them. And it's the same thing when it comes to people thinking that they can show up and serve everybody. And a lot of the times, money, of course, could be a major factor that's attributed to that. And when you could tell that they have not done any research, like one of the biggest things could be the lingo, right? Like, are they saying anything, like the word tactical, for example, are they saying anything that relates to our profession at all? Like, are they saying anything that's making us feel comfortable or relatable or to disassemble that us versus them mentality? Like, are we going to allow them into our inner circle? And when that professional individual has not even done that, it of course disassembles, like, why on earth would I want to employ them and sit there and talk shop with them and pay them money and dedicate my time to serve me in a way that I don't even think they're going to be able to, because you already have this in your mind of like, they're not going to be able to help at all.
Yeah. And in a lot of the instances that I can think of, they start correlating their own life story, their own instances in reference to those individual incidents when you're having that conversation with them, whether it's in a group setting or a one-on-one setting, that they're bringing up their own stories and their own experiences with it when it has nothing to do with them whatsoever.
You have an example? Because I remember.
So I remember part of the task force I was on before, and we had like a quarterly meeting, and we had a representative come on from, and it was a good mindset for the like task force coordinators to bring someone in this instance, because they wanted to look after the troops, look after everybody. And this individual came on and starts talking, and then they just start going down this rabbit hole of, oh, I know what you guys are going through, and trying to build that like trust relationship. And as they're talking, and they bring up kind of one instance of, oh, I was exposed to this, it was so hard, and I couldn't even imagine what you guys are going through. And you can get the general census in the room as everyone's like, what the fuck are she talking about?
Yeah. And So I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about how my presentation would be during something like that. And let's say that I was brought in and the discussion was around a officer that everybody just lost, whether it was on duty or not. And so like the thing that comes to mind for me is one of the most important people in my life, losing her, my mother, and like how could I relate the two, right? And so of course, losing a mother and then losing a partner at your place of work, like that is not the same, right? But there are, knowing what I know and working with law enforcement as long as I have, there are so many ways for me to be able to take that same, the whole reason I'm there is going to be for a purpose of being therapeutic. And so being able to dive into the similarities, if I even felt the need to share, the two wouldn't go in tandem. So like that wouldn't even be acceptable. It would probably be something more along the lines of like, working with a client and something similar that they had to go through. And that's for storytelling, right? Because when we're giving a presentation, then having storytelling involved, it's what's going to help to keep you engaged.
Yeah. And that, having a balance of everything, but ultimately I think where you see that dynamic occurring with somebody of trying to talk about, I know what you're going through. I know how it feels, when you really know, you're like, you don't have a clue. And if you're trying to sell yourself more in that instance of that, how it feels compared to actually just sitting back and listening to the problems, that's where I think you run into that big like separation.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a way for us to easily be able to screen these types of things for ourselves. And when somebody comes in and they're using something like, I know how you feel, that is self-internalizing and, trying to relate on an emotional level, which that could be a red flag. Not always, but it could be. And so, I'm again thinking about myself. And so the flip side to that would be looking for somebody who comes in and they're validating your feelings. They're validating the way that you're feeling. So I might sit down on top of a desk and look at everybody and say, John Doe just died and you guys worked with him for a very long time and this really fucking sucks.
Yeah. And having that approach to an instance like that, you're going to start seeing those walls start coming down from the audience, from those individuals who are really hurting from whatever it may be.
I think too that when it comes to the hidden battles that you face, there are a lot of times to where on the surface you're going to look totally calm and totally collected, but I think that inside a lot of the times you could feel super depleted because of that constant exposure to the trauma. And yet if it's not being addressed, then you're going to develop so many other things that are going to be automatic with your emotional and your physical response that you might not even recognize are building up. It could be something like hypervigilance that never turns off. You can have strained family dynamics. You can have these silent struggles with substance use. We've talked about that and how I am a major proponent for making sure that we drug test officers. I wish that we would, and we absolutely should. Those who disagree with that are the ones that we should probably test first. And, you might have this identity that's tied to only the job, and we see that happen all too often.
Yeah, being able to recognize those instances in the individual first responders and yourself is so important to recognize, because then you can actually seek the desired outcome that you would truly want out of a situation.
There's a lot of ways to be able to take back control of this too. And, we talk a lot about building that transition ritual between work and home. Clint, you're great at that. Whether it's something that you cue in on or something that you're doing that you've already set up in your mind an if-then situation. Like if I reach for my door handle on my way home, then I know that this is my mental clock out. Or you're putting on a podcast and you're listening to that on your way home from work, then that could be your ritual. That's the transition between work and home. And I think too, prioritizing open communication with your family. And there are a lot of people that for whatever nature it is, whether it's sensitivity or not, perhaps they don't have that at home. At the very least, make sure that you're semi-employing one of your friends or somebody who you can trust and talk to about these types of things, to have that ability to word vomit when you need to. you, and to replace any kind of destructive coping mechanism with something healthy. There's so many alternatives.
Yeah, being able to find those hobbies, being able to find those outside ventures to be able to support you and to get you out of that fight or flight mindset that you're always in, and or that hypervigilant state is super important, because once you can kind of reset yourself and be able to just get into a calm state of mind, it's going to help tremendously.
And one of the most important things, and if you're not doing this, you're setting yourself up for a heck of a time later on in life, is to make sure that you have hobbies and interests that have nothing to do with what you do for work. I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.